The snow falls silently over the frozen fields of eastern Prussia, December 1944. Dawn breaks with the distant rumble of engines that shake the very ground. Through the morning mist emerges a monstrous silhouette, the Panzerkampfwagen 8 Maus, Hitler's colossal 188-ton steel behemoth, crawling toward a narrow bridge spanning the icy Oder River. Captain Wilhelm Müller stands transfixed, binoculars pressed to his eyes, his breath forming clouds in the biting cold. Behind him, a small contingent of German engineers exchange worried glances. They've received their orders. Ensure the Maus crosses into Poland to join the final desperate defense against the advancing Soviet army. God help us all, whispers Lieutenant Hans Bauer at Müller's side, his face haggard from sleepless nights spent calculating load-bearing capacities. That bridge won't hold. Müller lowers his binoculars, his weathered face betraying nothing of the storm raging within. 3 years ago, he'd stood in the Führer's presence as Hitler praised the Maus project, the ultimate weapon that would turn the tide of war. Now, as the behemoth approaches, Müller knows he faces an impossible choice that will seal the fate of not only the superweapon but also his loyal men. From the nearby Treline, Soviet reconnaissance officer Dmitry Sokolov watches through his own field glasses, a cold smile forming on his lips. Intelligence had been right. The Germans were attempting to move their secret weapon. A weapon that, despite its terrifying size, might be defeated not by Soviet shells, but by the simple laws of physics and engineering that even Hitler's will could not overcome. The Maus tank represented Hitler's obsession with superlative weapons, a philosophy of bigger is better that had infected the Third Reich's military development since 1941. As Wilhelm Müller watches the mammoth vehicle inch closer to the bridge, his mind drifts to 3 years earlier, when he first became entangled with the project. Berlin, 1941. A brightly lit conference room in the Reich Chancellery. Müller, then a promising engineering officer with combat experience from the French campaign, stands rigidly as Adolf Hitler enthusiastically approves Ferdinand Porsche's concept for the largest tank ever conceived. It will crush everything in its path. Hitler had proclaimed, eyes gleaming with fanatical certainty. No Allied weapon will penetrate its armor. That night, celebrating his new assignment to the Maus development team, Müller had shared drinks with his childhood friend, Ernst Hoffmann, an engineer who had vocally opposed the project. Mobility wins wars, Wilhelm, Ernst had argued, his voice low but passionate. This monstrosity will drain resources we desperately need elsewhere. It's a folly that will help us lose this war. Their heated debate had ended their friendship. 2 weeks later, Ernst was reassigned to the Eastern Front after his criticisms reached the wrong ears. The memory of their last handshake still haunts Müller, especially after receiving word of Ernst's death near Stalingrad a year later. Lieutenant Bauer interrupts Müller's painful reminiscence. "Sir, I've recalculated 3 times. The bridge's support structure cannot withstand the concentrated pressure. The Maus weighs as much as a dozen regular tanks." Müller nods grimly. The young lieutenant doesn't know that Müller had raised these exact concerns years ago, only to be silenced by SS officers overseeing the project. The Reich had poured millions of Reichsmarks and countless labor hours into the Maus while German forces retreated on all fronts. From his vantage point, Soviet officer Sokolov observes the German predicament with professional interest. His own journey to this moment had been equally fraught. Having survived the brutal siege of Leningrad by eating wallpaper paste to stave off starvation, Sokolov had volunteered for reconnaissance duty with a single-minded purpose: to help destroy the Nazi war machine that had caused such suffering. Sokolov's commander, Colonel Baranov, crawls up beside him in the snow. "Our artillery units are in position," he whispers. "But I'm curious to see if they actually attempt to cross. That bridge looks barely strong enough for a regular panzer." Back at the bridge approach, Müller makes his decision. "Prepare the demolition charges," he orders quietly. "If we cannot cross, this weapon will not fall into enemy hands." The order sends shockwaves through his engineering team. Sergeant Weber, a devoted party member, looks stricken. "But Captain, the Führer himself—" "The Führer is not here," Müller cuts him off. "We are. And we will do what is necessary." As the massive tank continues its lumbering approach, its 150mm main gun casting a long shadow across the snowy landscape. Müller cannot help but see it as the perfect symbol of Germany's failing war strategy, impressively powerful yet practically useless, unable to adapt to battlefield realities. Hey folks, I'm curious, where are you watching this video from? Drop your location in the comments below and let me know if you've ever seen any of these massive war machines in museums. The Maus tank grinds to a halt 50 meters from the bridge. Its mammoth tracks have churned the frozen ground into mud, and diesel exhaust billows around its angular hull like industrial fog. Inside the cramped fighting compartment, Tank Commander Kurt Schultz wipes sweat from his brow despite the winter chill. The 5-man crew has been fighting with the temperamental beast for hours, nursing it forward meter by agonizing meter. Engineering team reports the bridge is unsafe, Herr Hauptmann, his radio operator relays. They recommend we find an alternative crossing. Schultz slams his fist against the steel wall. There is no alternative. We have our orders from Berlin. Outside, Captain Müller approaches the tank. The massive 128mm gun barrel towers above him, a testament to German engineering prowess and strategic myopia. The tank had been designed to dominate open battlefields that no longer existed in this stage of the war. The Maus required special railway transport just to move between testing grounds, a detail conveniently overlooked by the High Command when they ordered this desperate deployment. Request permission to disembark and discuss options, Schultz radios. After receiving approval, he climbs down from the tank, his black uniform stained with oil and grime. The meeting between Schultz and Müller quickly deteriorates. The Führer himself ordered this tank to the front. Schultz insists, his face flushed with anger. Your job is to facilitate that movement, not obstruct it. My job is to make sound engineering assessments, Müller replies evenly. And I'm telling you, Commander, this bridge will collapse under the Maus. Physics doesn't care about orders from Berlin. From the Treeline, Sokolov watches the Germans argue. He's close enough now to catch fragments of their heated exchange. Beside him, a radio operator whispers coordinates to Soviet artillery positions. They could open fire now, but Colonel Baranov has ordered observation only. The intelligence value of watching the Germans struggle with their superweapon is too precious to interrupt. Let them solve this problem themselves, Baranov had said with a cruel smile. Either they destroy their own bridge trying to cross, or they expose their precious tank to our artillery by taking a longer route. Either way, we win. As tensions escalate between the tank crew and engineers, Sergeant Weber sidles up to Müller. Captain, he says quietly, I've just received a priority transmission from Division HQ. SS Colonel Richter is en route to supervise the crossing. Müller feels the blood drain from his face. Colonel Richter, the infamous SS officer who had Ernst transferred to the Eastern Front for questioning the Maus project. His arrival will eliminate all possibility of a rational decision. In a moment of desperate clarity, Müller makes his decision. Lieutenant Bauer, he calls. Begin preparing the bridge for emergency reinforcement. Weber, requisition every timber beam from the nearby village. We'll attempt to strengthen the crossing. But as his team scrambles to comply, Müller pulls Bauer aside. The reinforcement won't work, he whispers. But it will buy us time. At nightfall, place the demolition charges as planned. We'll destroy the bridge ourselves before risking a crossing. Bauer's eyes widen. That's high treason, sir. No, Müller responds firmly. It's preventing a pointless waste of an irreplaceable weapon and the lives of good German soldiers. Sometimes true loyalty requires disobedience. Unknown to either man, Weber has overheard their exchange, his young face hardening with fury at what he perceives as betrayal. As darkness falls, the situation grows more complex. A local farmer, forced to help with the bridge reinforcement, reveals to Müller that there's a Soviet reconnaissance team observing from the forest. They've been there since morning, the old man whispers. My grandson saw them moving through our fields. Müller now faces an impossible choice. Attempt a crossing that will likely destroy both the bridge and the tank, sabotage the mission himself and face execution for treason, or remain in position and become targets for the waiting Soviet artillery. Hey everyone! If you're enjoying this historical deep dive, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers on our channel, and every like helps us get there. Your support means we can keep bringing you these fascinating stories from history's forgotten corners. The night descends with an unnatural silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the mouse's cooling metal and the nervous movements of soldiers preparing for what morning will bring. Captain Muller stands at the bridge, the weight of his decision heavy on his shoulders. Lieutenant Bauer approaches with news that chills Muller to the bone. The demolition charges are in place, sir, but there's a problem. Sergeant Weber is missing. Before Muller can respond, headlights appear on the road behind them, a convoy of 3 vehicles approaching rapidly. SS Colonel Richter has arrived, hours ahead of schedule. The colonel emerges from his staff car, tall and imperious in his black uniform. Captain Muller, he says coldly, explain why the mouse has not crossed the bridge as ordered. Muller begins his explanation of the engineering limitations, but is cut short when Sergeant Weber steps forward from behind the colonel. Sir, Captain Muller and Lieutenant Bauer have placed explosives on the bridge. They plan to destroy it rather than follow orders. The revelation lands like a thunderbolt. In seconds, Muller and Bauer find themselves under arrest, SS soldiers training weapons on them as Colonel Richter's face contorts with rage. This is how the fatherland is betrayed, Richter hisses, not by the enemy, but by cowards afraid to take necessary risks. Dawn breaks with a macabre scene. Muller and Bauer stand at the bridge entrance, hands bound behind their backs. Colonel Richter has arranged a grim demonstration. The 2 officers will witness the crossing they claimed was impossible, then face immediate field execution for their treason. Start the engines, Richter commands. Inside the mouse, Commander Schultz reluctantly complies, knowing what the engineers have told him about the bridge's capacity. His crew exchanges glances of silent desperation as the massive engine roars to life. From the forest, Sokolov and his reconnaissance team watch in amazement. They're actually going to attempt it, he whispers to Colonel Baranov. Should we alert the artillery? Not yet, Baranov replies, transfixed by the unfolding drama. Let's see if the Germans save us the ammunition. The mouse begins its ponderous advance toward the bridge. Its steel tracks grind against the frozen earth, each movement bringing 188 tons of pressure closer to the fragile wooden and steel structure. As the tank reaches the bridge approach, Muller makes one final, desperate plea. Colonel, I beg you, the mathematics don't lie. That bridge cannot support. Silence. Richter strikes him across the face. The will of the Reich overcomes all obstacles. Your lack of faith is your downfall. The mouse rolls onto the bridge entrance. The ancient timbers groan in protest. Commander Schultz, sweating profusely despite the bitter cold, orders the tank to proceed at its slowest possible speed. Meter by meter, the Colossus advances. The bridge bends visibly under the unprecedented weight. A support beam cracks with a sound like a rifle shot. Keep moving, Richter shouts. Halfway across, disaster strikes. With a series of sharp reports, the primary support struts begin to fail. The bridge shudders violently. Reverse! Reverse! Schultz screams into his microphone, but it's too late. The bridge collapses with a thunderous roar, sending the 188-ton behemoth crashing through splintering wood and twisting metal into the icy waters below. The mouse, too heavy to be fully submerged, sits half-sunk in the freezing river, its turret and upper hull still visible above the water. Its crew scrambles to escape the flooding compartments, emerging onto the exposed superstructure. In the chaos that follows, no one notices when Sokolov gives a signal. Soviet mortars suddenly rain down around the stranded tank. The exposed German soldiers scatter for cover. Lieutenant Bauer seizes the moment, tackling the SS guard nearest to him and Muller. In the confusion, they manage to slip away from their captors and take shelter behind a destroyed truck. What now, Captain? Bauer asks as they crouch amid the artillery barrage. Muller watches as his worst predictions come true, the irreplaceable superweapon rendered useless not by enemy fire, but by the fundamental laws of physics that no amount of Nazi willpower could overcome. Now, he says grimly, We survive if we can. And we remember that no weapon, however powerful, can overcome reality. The morning after the bridge collapse unfolds in chaos and recrimination. Soviet artillery continues to pound the area, targeting the stranded mouse with methodical precision. The massive tank, half submerged in the freezing river, has become an immovable steel coffin for German ambitions. Captain Muller and Lieutenant Bauer, having escaped execution by mere minutes, hide in the cellar of an abandoned farmhouse a kilometer from the disaster. Through a crack in the boarded window, they watch black smoke rise from the battlefield they've left behind. They're trying to destroy it themselves, Bauer observes, to keep the Soviets from capturing it. Muller nods grimly. Too little, too late. The technical specifications are already compromised. Their conversation is interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Both men reach for weapons they don't have, then freeze as the door creaks open. A figure appears, Commander Schultz, his black uniform torn and soaked, his face streaked with soot and blood. "I should kill you both where you stand," Schultz says hoarsely, leaning heavily against the doorframe. "Your sabotage cost Germany its greatest weapon." "Physics sank your tank, Commander, not sabotage," Muller responds evenly. "Where is Colonel Richter?" "Dead. Soviet mortar." Schultz's laugh is hollow. He was shouting about German engineering superiority when it hit. The three men, enemies moments ago, find themselves united by shared catastrophe. Over the next hours, other survivors trickle in. 2 mouse crewmen, several engineers, and a handful of infantry who had been providing perimeter security. "What happened to Weber?" Bauer asks one of the engineers. "Last I saw, he was trying to reach the SS convoy vehicles. Artillery got him." By nightfall, their impromptu band of survivors has grown to 14 men. All witness to a military disaster that epitomized the Reich's fundamental strategic failures, prioritizing wonder weapons over practical warfare, ignoring technical limitations in favor of ideology, and punishing truth-tellers while rewarding blind obedience. As they plan their retreat westward, hoping to reach German lines before Soviet infantry crosses the river, Muller finds a moment alone with Schultz. "You knew, didn't you?" he asks the tank commander. "You knew the bridge wouldn't hold." Schultz stares into the darkness. "I calculated the weight distribution myself 3 days ago. I sent the findings to High Command." His voice breaks slightly. "They responded that my concerns showed defeatist tendencies and ordered me to proceed regardless. And you obeyed." "I obeyed," Schultz confirms, bitterness evident in every syllable. "Because that's what good German officers do. We follow orders." He looks directly at Muller. "Until men like you force us to confront what those orders truly mean." 6 months later, with the war ended and Germany in ruins, Muller sits across from a Soviet interrogation officer in a POW processing center near Dresden. To his shock, the officer is none other than Captain Dmitry Sokolov. "You were watching us that day," Muller realizes. "You saw everything." Sokolov nods. "A textbook case of how not to deploy armored vehicles. My report on the incident is now required reading at Soviet military academies." "And the mouse? What happened to it?" "We salvaged it after you retreated. It's being studied in Moscow. Impressive engineering, utterly impractical design." Sokolov slides a cigarette across the table. "Your bridge assessment was correct, by the way. Our engineers confirmed it would have collapsed even if you hadn't placed charges." The revelation hits Muller with unexpected force. His professional judgment, questioned and rejected by his own side, validated by the enemy. "What happens now?" he asks. "Now? You help us understand the other wonder weapons Hitler was developing. In exchange, your processing as a POW will be expedited." 2 years later, Muller stands on a Hamburg street, officially denazified and repatriated. The city around him lies in ruins, Germany's grand ambitions reduced to rubble. He has carried one lesson with him from that day at the bridge: technological superiority means nothing without strategic wisdom to employ it. In a small cafe, miraculously still operating amid the devastation, he finds Lieutenant Bauer waiting for him. The young officer had been released 6 months earlier. I wasn't sure you'd come, Bauer says as Muller sits down. I gave my word, Muller replies simply. They sit in silence for a moment, two men forever bonded by their refusal to participate in madness disguised as military necessity. I've been thinking about what happened, Bauer finally says. Not just at the bridge, but all of it. The mouse. The whole war. And what conclusion have you reached? That Germany wasn't defeated by superior numbers or resources or even strategy, Bauer answers slowly. We were defeated by our own mythology, the belief that willpower could overcome physical reality. That fanaticism could substitute for sound judgment. Muller nods, remembering Richter's face as he ordered the mouse onto the doomed bridge. The most dangerous weapon in war isn't found in any arsenal, he says quietly. It's the ability to make men believe lies. As they leave the cafe, Muller glances at a newspaper headline announcing the beginning of the Cold War between their Soviet liberators and their American occupiers. New superpowers, new weapons, new mythologies being constructed. Do you think they'll learn from our mistakes? Bauer asks, following his gaze. Muller considers this as they walk through the ruined city, past the skeletal remains of what was once the most powerful industrial nation in Europe. Some will, he answers finally. The ones who understand that the laws of physics, economics, and human nature cannot be overruled by ideology or ambition. The ones who remember that even the mightiest weapon is useless if it cannot cross a simple bridge. The sun sets over Hamburg as Muller and Bauer part ways at the train station. Their chance meeting has stirred memories both would prefer to forget, yet both recognize the importance of remembering. What will you do now? Bauer asks. Rebuild like everyone else, Muller replies. Not weapons this time. Bridges. They share a knowing smile at the symbolism, then a firm handshake that acknowledges what words cannot. That sometimes, the most courageous act of war is refusing to participate in its madness. Years later, as Europe rebuilds and new superpowers race to create ever more devastating weapons, the lesson of the mouse tank remains a whispered cautionary tale in military engineering schools. The tank that could destroy anything but cross nothing. The superweapon that fell victim not to enemy fire, but to its own excessive ambition. In museums across the world, surviving pieces of German wonder weapons stand as silent monuments to technological brilliance harnessed to strategic folly, a warning that innovation without practicality leads only to impressive failures. The story of the mouse reminds us that even in our darkest hours, individual moral courage matters. That sometimes, the true heroes are those who speak uncomfortable truths rather than comfortable lies. And that no amount of ideological fervor can overcome the fundamental principles that govern our physical world. Thanks for watching this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating military failures. If you enjoyed this exploration of the mouse tank disaster, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to catch our upcoming series on other doomed superweapons throughout military history. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What other historical weapons or military decisions would you like us to analyze next? Until next time, remember that history's greatest lessons often come from its most spectacular failures.